W-E-L, middle initial W, last name Waters, W-A-T-E-R-S. Pastor of Joy Tabernacle and Agape Temple AME churches, also part of the Dallas Black Clergy Agenda. I want to welcome you to the Joy Empowerment Center on what is a very important day in the life of our city and even in our nation. I want to name some of the other groups that are standing with us in this moment. Faith Forward Dallas, Mothers Against Police Brutality. I've already named the Dallas Black Clergy Agenda, the Social Action Commission of the Greater Dallas District of the AME Church, as well as Faith Commons. We'll begin with a statement from Imam Omar Suleiman on behalf of Faith Forward Dallas. That'll be followed by prayer by Dr. Irie Session, and then I'll come back with further instruction.
I would just like to, name is Omar Suleiman, O-M-A-R-S-U-L-E-I-M-A-N. And again, I think I just want to first and foremost thank the family of Botham John. They've been a gift to us. Botham, as an individual, was a gift to Dallas, and the entire family has been a gift to the whole world. A gift with their love and their grace and the example that they have that's inspired all of us, I think, to be better. And from the very beginning of this entire episode, there has been an effort by detractors to try to limit the scope of this to an accident in the apartment of Botham John, which was just a tragic mistake. And from the very beginning, we have insisted that this is part of a bigger problem, that we need to have a broader discussion, that this needs to be a springboard. And the family of Botham John has done no less. They have insisted throughout this entire process that the conversation be expanded and that does not diminish Botham, but instead it amplifies his selfless spirit. And it amplifies what this family is all about. And Mom has used every moment to expand her platform to include the mothers who don't have the voice that she has in this city, that have been suffocating for far too long. So I just want to say that let's not make this about a mistake in the wrong apartment. Let's make it about an intentionally designed criminal justice system that systematically squanders the rights of others. And as we're captured by a beautiful hug, let's not lose sight of all the hugs that can happen no more.
Dr. Irie, I-R-I-E, Session, S-E-S-S-I-O-N, would you pray with me, please? Creator God, we come to you now, gathered as a concerned community, a community in mourning, a community grieving with a family whose tragic loss has wounded us all. We come to you, God, with hearts heavy and conflicted. While we are grateful for the conviction and sentencing of the one who committed a senseless act of murder after trespassing the home of our beloved Botham, we are also appalled by the corruption that followed. God, we are here today in community seeking change, radical change, so that all people in this city can experience justice, equity, and fairness. God, be with us. And let those who have ears to hear and the power to make change do just that. It is in the matchless name of Jesus the Christ that we offer up this prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Session. Now we'll hear from John Fullenwider with Mothers Against Police Brutality, who will then be followed by Attorney Lee Merritt and the John family, should they desire to speak. John.
Thank you. My name is John Fullenwider, and I'm a co-founder of Mothers Against Police Brutality, an organization that was founded in 2013 because the Dallas police killed this man, Clinton Allen, an unarmed 25-year-old, shot 5 times in the chest, once in his upper arm, and once at close range in the back. Holding this sign is Khadijah Brown. who's a member of the church here, and here holding the sign for Bertrand Davis, another victim of police shooting in South Dallas, is Lorescence Williams. I'm going to just hit the high points of our statement, but we have a copy of it for each of you. So you just bear with me for a minute. We are gathered today, people of faith, faith leaders, community organizers, allies, and friends, to demand changes in the Dallas Police Department and to call for an investigation of the Dallas Police Department by the United States Department of Justice. We are here to change an unforgiving system, a national system that kills 1,000 people a year with little or no accountability, and a local police department, that has a decades-long history of unaccountable police violence against the public. The Dallas Police Department has an unearned reputation as a reformed department, sometimes called model department. And there are reasons for this. This is partly due to the outpouring of sympathy for Dallas police after the sniper attacks in 2016. It's due partly to the employment from time to time of reform-minded police chiefs. It is due partly to the relative obscurity of the people killed by Dallas police over the past 4.5 decades. People whose deaths were never reported nationally. People whose names may perhaps only be remembered by their grieving families. And finally, this reputation for reform is due to the fact that since 1973, when Officer Darrell Kane got a 5-year sentence for blowing the brains out of a 12-year-old Latino child, and this year, when Officer Amber Geiger received a 10-year sentence for killing an unarmed black man, Botham Jean. Throughout that whole period, 46 years, not a single City of Dallas police officer faced a trial in a fatal shooting. I ask you, is it likely that hundreds of deaths at the hands of police over 4.5 decades could all be justified? Is it likely that in 1983, when Dallas police shot 26 people, killing 13, that every shooting was justified? Is it likely that the 114 people that were shot by Dallas police, many of them fatally in the period 1981 to 84, that all those shootings were justified? Is it likely that in 1986, when 29 people were shot, 10 fatally, that all those shootings were justified? The Dallas police used deadly force more than 200 times between 2003 and 2017, killing 77 people. No charges, no indictments, no trial, no verdicts, no sentencing, no punishment of any kind in any fatal shooting, until finally, in June 2017, Christopher Hess was indicted for manslaughter for shooting a young mother, Genevieve Dawes, while she sat in her car, unarmed, with her boyfriend. This officer was indicted for manslaughter 2 years ago, and he hasn't come to trial yet. And so when we come to the murder of Botham Jean, we come to it from a long history of unaccountable police homicide in this city. And we cannot let this history be forgotten or whitewashed. Now, far from being a model department, the evidence over the past 45 years shows the Dallas Police Department to be among the least accountable in this country. The trial of Amber Geiger revealed 2 glimpses of the Dallas Police Department in an OIS. We haven't had a trial since most of y'all were born. And when we finally get one, we see two officers, the suspect and her partner, casually destroying evidence. The text that went straight to her, that went directly to her state of mind at the time. And then we see questionable behavior of the Dallas Police Department after a homicide suspect has been apprehended and is sitting in a police car. He opens the door, he takes her out of the car, he says, turn off the video. There's a reason they have people sitting in a police car with a video on. A lot of times they'll mutter to themselves, oh my God, I wish I hadn't done this, right? So it's evidence. But he pretty cavalierly, and no one at the scene stopped him from doing that. Chief Hollis said she wants to investigate these two glimpses of misconduct, and we support that investigation. But we need to go a little farther. Amber Geiger's partner, Martin Rivera, killed an unarmed black man named Brandon Washington in 2007. Is it likely that he would destroy evidence in the trial of his partner and not falsify evidence or lie maybe about what happened out there that night in his own police homicide? This is not ancient history. This is current history. And this history is reaching into the present. Martin Rivera, Geiger and her lawyers called him my rock, my partner, my friend. He taught me everything. He's my mentor. What did he teach her? How to get away with murder? Because if he'd been held accountable in 2007, perhaps Botham Jean would be alive today. Perhaps she would have had a better trainer, mentor, and partner. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the Dallas Police Department. I'm just going to hit a couple of high points. One is that because of what was revealed about the destruction of evidence and the improper or troubling behavior of the DPA in the aftermath of this officer-involved shooting, we are going to bring to the police chief and the Dallas County District Attorney a list of prior shootings over the past 15 years. Many of them are the names of these people here that you see, that we don't forget, that we remember, that were killed probably unjustly. They were unarmed, they were mentally ill, didn't drop a screwdriver fast enough like Jason Harrison, shot 5 times, twice in the back. We have a videotape of Officer Hudson getting out of his squad car, pulling his gun before he even says a word to an unarmed man that he later shot in the back, Andrew Gagne. Andrew Gagne was killed the day after Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson. And the day after that, a kid holding a knife over in the Love Field area, Jose Rodriguez, I think his name was. He was shot because he wouldn't drop the knife. But the official report says he was shot from a distance. The officer had positioned himself 2 or 3 houses away from him. And you know in Dallas that's at least 150 feet. So there are many questionable shootings and many egregious shootings. Excuse me. I never like to do too slick a presentation. There are many questionable shootings and many shootings equally egregious to what happened to both of them. And they were never investigated. And the district attorney's office didn't even do independent investigations of police shootings until after 2014, when Craig Washington, fighting for re-election, formed the Civil Rights Unit at the Dallas Police Department. Susan Hawk staffed it up, and by 2015, they hadn't indicted anybody, but they were ready to go. And under Faith Johnson, they began to do some serious investigations. And by the end of her term, we had 5 officers under indictment, 2 for shooting and 2 in the actions that caused it, and 3 in actions that caused the death. So we have had some change. But it's not like we had a long period of progress and now everything's good. It is not. So we want to see those cases reopened and reinvestigated. When Amber Geiger was indicted for murder, there were 9 narcotics cases that she'd worked on that had to be dropped because her testimony wouldn't be used. No prosecutor would use her testimony. There are almost 200 officers in the Dallas area that are on the so-called Brady list. They're so untrustworthy, they perjured themselves too much to where their testimony can't be used in court. And we'd like to know who those, that figure's from 2015. And we'd like to know the names of those officers and whether they're even fit to be police officers. If they're so unreliable, you can't use them as witnesses in court. Officers who've been found to post racist, homophobic, and hateful, violent texts and Facebook posts. We need to know who those officers are. Press reports have said there are about 40 Dallas police officers that do this. Now, these officers cannot, like Amber Geiger, be expected to treat everyone equally if in their spare time they're posting racist, sexist, homophobic, and hate-filled texts and Facebook posts. So we need to out them, and we need to, when warranted, remove them from the department. Families who suffer the loss of a loved one at the hands of Dallas police need to be treated with dignity and respect and according to a published protocol. We have families, the mother of Bertrand Davis, she's sitting in the lobby of the police station the night he's killed, waiting to hear what happened to him. And where she hears it is the police chief upstairs at a press conference. She saw it on her phone, what happened to her son, before anyone officially even spoke with her. We need this policy within the next 6 months, and we need it developed in consultation with moms and families that have been through this. The role of the DPA needs to be reviewed. Now, it may be, as Mike Mata claims, that everything he did after Botham was shot is according to his contract, is according to the agreement the police department has with the DPA. But if that's true, we need to look more carefully at that agreement and see if perhaps their interference in the aftermath of a homicide might be counterproductive. The DPA outside of the Real Estate Association is the most sought-after endorsement of every candidate that runs for city council, judge, you name it. And we want to call on candidates and elected officials today to refuse the endorsements and contributions from the Dallas Police Association. We need nonpartisan, non-political policing in Dallas. Finally, all officers that are involved in fatal police shootings need to stay off duty, off armed patrol, until the grand jury and all other investigations are complete and whether we know they're going to be charged or not. Now, we have recent examples. The death of Jason Harrison in 2014 and the death of Andrew Gagne in 2014, where the officers were back on duty, back on armed patrol before the autopsies were even released. The 3 officers that were involved in the death of Tony Timpa in August of 2016, they were on duty when their indictments were handed down. They'd been on patrol, just like they were the night he died, the whole time until they finally indicted. So we need these officers off duty and unarmed until the grand jury and all investigations are complete. They have the presumption of innocence, but they don't have the privilege of going back in the patrol car fully armed while they're under investigation for what could be a murder. I want to just say briefly something about the Department of Justice and the national government. We have a crisis when 1,000 people a year are killed by the police. There is a crisis there. 20% of them are completely unarmed. About 25% have a documented history of mental illness. This is a national problem, and it requires a national response. It's a major human rights violation that takes place at the local level all across this country. Now, there's a precedent for this. When the county registrars in the South refused to register black people to vote, we had a national response, okay? And we need the same thing. When the county district attorneys and the local police departments continue to kill 1,000 people a year with impunity, without accountability, without even serious investigations, with no trials, basically, we need a national response. The ultimate guarantor of human rights in this country is the federal government, and we need the DOJ to do a lot more. In that spirit, we are asking the Department of Justice to come here and investigate this unaccountable police department the way the DOJ investigated the department in Ferguson, in Baltimore, in Chicago, and other cities that have a track record of unaccountable policing. The DOJ under Obama at least, did a good top-to-bottom review of all aspects of policing in the city, and we want that same review. Now, with the local reforms that we're proposing, with some assistance from the DOJ, and hopefully with more national response on police shootings nationwide, we rededicate ourselves today. We dedicate our churches. We dedicate our voices. We dedicate ourselves to the memory of those who have been killed by the police unjustly, and mindful of all the work that's come before us, and mindful of all other organizations that are working on this. We intend to work in coalition with everyone we can to end this national crisis of police brutality in America. Thank you.
Good morning. The city of Dallas finds itself at the center of an important discussion about justice and mercy. I stand in between a community representing a family that is still hurting because of an injustice done to them, and a community who shares their frustration. On the day that Amber Geiger was sentenced, Botham's little brother, Brant, he showed an amount of mercy uncommon, really, among humankind. And he received a great deal of recognition and accolades for that because it was something that we hadn't seen before. And it was beautiful. And I just want to let Brant know, as a community, we are proud of him. And he represents the best in us. But he was able to show that mercy because his family had access to justice. So justice comes first, and then mercy. And so a lot of people would ask, why is the Jean family and their representatives still standing, demanding action, demanding change, demanding accountability, when they seem so ready to forgive? Well, justice creates an opportunity to forgive. And that kind of justice has been denied far too many families. We are surrounded by families who have been denied an opportunity to show anyone mercy because no one has shown them justice yet. And so on behalf of the Botham Jean family, on behalf of the Botham Jean Foundation, we recommit ourselves to the cause of justice. And we are calling on Chief Hall. We've learned that the Dallas Police Department is incompetent to investigate itself. It doesn't have the ability to do that. And while I appreciate Chief Hall being willing to do an internal affairs investigation, that would be inadequate. We ask that Chief Hall call on the Department of Justice herself to investigate her department, which she is new to. It's time to clean house. We need a serious effort to clean house. This trial pulled the veil back for all of us. We can't just pull it back and go back and pretend that this injustice doesn't exist. We must take it on, head on, and we must commit ourselves to it every day, each one of us, until there's a culture of change, until there's a culture of accountability, not just a little bit. Like Amber Geiger gave Botham Jean just a little bit of CPR. It's insufficient. We need actual justice in the city of Dallas and throughout the United States of America, so this family is standing with this community and demanding that that happens in the name of Botham Jean, in the name of progress. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank everyone for standing with us over the past year. I know the Dallas community and all of you represented here have stood from the beginning. I recall even before landing in Dallas on September 7th that you had already started to demonstrate your disgust for what happened to my son. And even while we live in St. Lucia, I continue to follow the news and see many of your faces who took the streets, who took the steps, and who really sent out your voices to demand justice for my son. I'm deeply appreciative of what you've done, and I want to say thanks to the Dallas area Churches of Christ, my brethren who have stood with me and who have given me really great support, to all the activist groups, to the civil rights groups, to the mothers who have been impacted by police brutality, and every one of you. It could not have been done by the family alone, and your voice, your efforts really contributed to the justice that I received on behalf of my son. Like I said before, my family's leaving. We're going back to St. Lucia. But you have to do all that is necessary to make Dallas a safer place. I think if we start with Dallas, the other states in America will follow suit and make America better. So on behalf of my family, on behalf of the people of St. Lucia, and on behalf of my son, both of them, I thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions now? We will refer those to Attorney Merritt.
Questions?
Specifically, you guys were talking a little bit about training. Is that one of the things that you want the Justice Department to look at? What specifically do you want the DOJ to look at?
I would like to see the DOJ do a comprehensive audit of all things police related in Dallas. When we've seen these audits before, like in Ferguson, it started from anywhere from traffic ticket stops to use of force. But a thorough audit of the department to check for red flags, for racism, for targeting, for lack of accountability when there is evidence of crimes, for cover-ups, et cetera, where we look, we take a thorough look into each department and figure out what's behind the veil. Now, some of the organizers of this last night and I were discussing what some things that we already know are going wrong in Dallas, and I don't know if Brother Omar or Brother John want to speak on that specifically.
I would add
Please, step on up.
We want the DOJ to currently audit the department, but we don't want them to ignore the history that I described. And we want the DOJ to interview mothers and families of people who lost their children in problematic circumstances at the hands of Dallas police. This is long overdue, and it might be a little more than they normally do, but we think it's worthwhile. We think it's an untold story that this country needs to know. We'd like them to look specifically at what's in the folder that they used to send routinely to the district attorney and get a routine no bill coming back. What's in there? And there might be civil rights violations in there, and also what's not in there. Most of the people that killed these guys, they're still on the force, you know? So let's find out maybe what really happened in these cases. Because you can say that the cases I mentioned and many others have never actually been investigated, except for the Dallas Police Department investigating itself. It's like auditing yourself. Nothing wrong here. The other thing I think that is not, we haven't mentioned, but we need a full audit of what the state troopers did in Dallas this summer. We don't even know the exact date when they left. Give out 12,000 tickets. Instead of solving any homicides, they leave us with an additional homicide. And there's no transparency about anything they did. And so we need for the district attorney and the chief to look at that, and if they won't, we need the DOJ to look at that as well.
The Jean family has been such a positive impact on the city of Dallas. I know you're from St. Lucia. This may be our last time to talk to you. I was hoping to find out what is Dallas in your future, if at all?
It's very painful to come to Dallas because I came when both of them was alive. I spent 3 weeks with both of them. I paid for that red mat. I paid for that ironing board and the bar stools that we saw in his apartment. So every time I pass on Lamar Street, it's very, very, very painful. I don't know that I want to be back in Dallas. Dallas robbed me of my son. But I don't see everyone in Dallas as an Amber Geyser. I think there are decent people in Dallas, and I wish every one of you well. But it's very painful to come back to the place that my son loved, yet still he was killed here.
Ms. Strong, what are you hoping to hear from Chief Hall that you haven't heard yet since the trial finished?
I don't want to hear anything. I want to see change. I think we've heard a lot.
That's right.
We're just hearing, but hearing does nothing. We need to seek meaningful change. We need to seek investigations, and we need to seek outcomes from these investigations.
Yes.
So talk, but no action means nothing.
So many people paid attention to that hug. You brought it up, and you made mention of the fact that only mercy can only come after justice. But if we could talk about the mercy at a moment, if Brant would be willing to talk about, have you been aware of just how many people have been affected by seeing that? People who only paid so level of attention to this, but who now very much know what happened because of you. Would you be willing to?
Yes, I'm aware. Yeah, and I know. Well, at the time, I didn't know the cameras were on. After the sentencing, I saw Amber's family leave the room, and along with Amber, and we left and came back. Upon coming back, I didn't think any cameras would be on. I thought it was over because we have the conviction, we have the sentencing, and I was asked to. They asked all of us, any of us who wanted to do the
Victim
impact statement, and that's when I came up and I said, I'll do it. And then I was called, and not knowing the attention it would get, but I did it. I said what I had to say. I meant what I said, and I thank God that I got the courage to say it.
It's important to note that, and Brandon's told me before, that 2 minutes before he gave the impact statement, he wasn't giving any statement. And then 2 minutes later, he was in the witness box, speaking his heart to the person who murdered his brother. It showed incredible bravery, but it wasn't something done for show. And I think that's the reason it's connected so well all over the country.
Does anyone have any reaction to the judge and her actions afterward too, when she?
If you were present in that courtroom, what Brant did bordered the miraculous, and the spirits had simply changed. I know that we want law and order, and there's jurisprudence, and jurisprudence says when a person is convicted of a crime and sentenced, you don't touch them. No one does. You're not allowed to. The bailiffs won't allow it. They will drag you out of the court. That's the rules. But Brant asked for permission. He wanted to break that barrier, and he did. And the mood in the courtroom changed, and two very splintered communities began to look at each other like humans again, and the judge began to act like a human instead of a judge. And I know she's received blowback before, and I think it's unjustifiable. She had a human moment, and we respect her for that as well.
If I can make a statement in regards to that, and I think this is imperative, particularly for a city like Dallas. Let's remember that the city of Dallas is the most segregated and racially inequitable city in all of America. We must hold both of these testimonies in tension with one another. Yes, we have forgiveness, but forgiveness does not absolve us of our responsibilities for justice. And so it's imperative that we have both mother and son standing side by side, because these are the parallel streams that we must advance down together. They're not mutually exclusive, but both are required for us to achieve justice for all.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out.
Can we, just one final item, we have Rabbi Nancy Caston. We are a gathering of faith leaders, and we're grateful for the faith witness of the John family, and she's going to provide us with the benediction and parting and prayers to safe return to St. Lucia for the John family.
I'm Rabbi Nancy Caston, Nancykasten, and I'm with Faith Forward Dallas and Faith Commons, our interfaith and multi-faith organizations here in our city. On Tuesday night and Wednesday morning this coming week, Jews all over the world will observe Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement. Along with fasting, refraining from worldly pursuits, and praying for God's forgiveness, we also recite a prescribed communal confession, an alphabet of sins. We admit to these transgressions in unison, out loud, in the first person plural. And before we do so, we recite the following. Our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that our prayers reach your presence and that you will not be indifferent to our supplications. We are arrogant and stiff-necked if we think that we can come before you and say, we are righteous and have not sinned. We have sinned. Amber Geiger has been punished for the murder of Botham Jean, and she'll spend the rest of her life trying to atone for that sin. Now that the trial is over, we are left to ask ourselves, individually and communally, not just the Department of Justice, not just the Dallas Police Department, but ourselves. What sins have we committed of omission and commission that have contributed to the damage that was revealed through this trial? It may be shocking to say we all killed Botham Jean, but we might want to ask ourselves, would Botham have been killed if all of us had started making noise, has started bringing attention to this, has started asking for these audits after any one or number of these people surrounding me had been killed? Part of the power of this trial and sentencing was just how easy it was to identify with both the perpetrator and the victim. Each spoke to our worst fears. First, that ultimately our lives are vulnerable, even in our own homes, despite our faith, our good deeds, our success in life, and systems designed ostensibly to protect us. And also, that when we perceive a threat, whether real or imagined, we are prone to react instinctively rather than responding thoughtfully, responsibly. And when we react instead of responding, we sometimes create devastation and destruction that cannot be undone. We may believe that we are obligated to protect what is ours, our lives, our loved ones, and our property, above and beyond all other considerations. But we have just seen a tragic example of how that conviction can lead to sin. Our atonement for the death of Botham Jean begins with our admission of the role that we played in it. And at this moment, as we bid farewell to his family and wish them blessing and peace and health, we also open ourselves up. We pray for the courage to admit our complicity in the sins that we rail against, so that we might be seen and loved for who we really are, human beings, frail and flawed, but deserving of love and forgiveness. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.